Today, I am joined by an infamous duo, the Night Owls, future Moldovan citizen, and Nightmare Vision. Welcome to Subversive.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for having us.
I'm very glad to have you on. I am a big fan of your audio productions, which are, as of now, not recorded. But like I said, you are the duo that puts on the the Night Owls production on Twitter Spaces, which is one of the few wonderful spaces that I sometimes get to take part in while I make breakfast, because it's at a strange time and it's wonderful that I get to listen in because I never get to listen into any spaces. Not that, it's not distinguished or better than the spaces that happen when I'm asleep, but it's
Yeah, we know.
great.
I know I have to get off. It's time for me to get offline when Alex comes on and she's listening.
Yeah, I'm like, making, my oats for the baby. It's morning somewhere. Yeah, but I do recommend the space. It's always populated by the most interesting creatures of the night, and it always goes in interesting places. I mean,
so true.
And soon it'll be a recorded podcast.
yes,
That's why we're here. We're promoting our upcoming podcast. This is an advertisement.
It's a long-running ad. It's like My Pillow, but for spaces.
Yeah, but I'm going to ask you about the structure of this podcast that I feel like you haven't necessarily decided on, but is it going to be an interview podcast, just going to be the two of you, like Red Scare type situations, themes?
It's going to be exactly like Red Scare. We're trying to negotiate which one's Anna and which one's Dasha.
I think we all know, but it's all good.
We've had very heated debates over this, where it's like, the negotiations are very tense for who gets the right to be Anna and who gets the right to be Dasha.
I think there's one that's more petite. Which one of you is more petite? That one's Dasha, and the one who's more just petite, but normal.
I'm doing intermittent fasting right now, so
you're Dasha.
I'm trying to become Dasha.
I mean, we're both 6'4", 280 pounds, 504 bench. So it's hard. We're just absolutely equal in every gargantuan metric.
240 IQ, I can imagine.
Absolutely. You said 340, right? Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Of course.
Perfect. Well, I mean, this looks like it's going to knock every other podcast out of the water. I mean, I am trembling as I speak, and
this is terrible.
I also can't wait to listen to podcasts. I mean, this rambling intros are also part of the podcast format, so you're gonna have to roll with it. But like,
you have to balance the effort posting and the shit posting.
Exactly. Not every interview is going to be, a magnum opus. The wonderful sailor interview, which people really enjoyed, or my sprawling Yarvin interviews, which were very
from
nice
Sailor's
as well.
Closet.
Yes. I thought that was such a nice touch.
Our goal is to. We're obviously not going to become we're not going to beat the Yarvin episode among your episodes, but we want to be the second most viewed episode. If we don't do that, we're not even going to bother making a podcast.
What's funny? The second most viewed episode is the second Yarvin episode. So we have to move down one more. I think that's kind of an effort post style episode. I had one with Theodore Dalrymple, but I think it's just a lot of views because people love Theodore Dalrymple.
Yeah, he's great. He's been around for so long.
Yeah,
he just told stories about poor people murdering each other. That was
it was wonderful because one thing I'm missing in life is more stories about poor people murdering each other, especially here in this region. But yeah, he was lovely, and he's really down on everything, but he hasn't taken the red pill yet. I think that's or the black pill. I guess I don't know what stage pill are we on.
Does he still write for Takis?
What do you mean?
He still. I think he still does.
Oh yeah. No, I was asking if Theodore Dalrymple, if he still writes for the same places he was writing for.
Oh yeah.
Like a few years ago.
Yeah, okay. He does. He has so many columns. He has a column in the Critic now. He just writes. He writes a few articles a week. It's almost impossible to keep up with him. He's got a fan page on Twitter, and they post insane. And I thought, they're going through the archives. No, every article on there was published yesterday. So yeah, very busy man. Talking about everything.
I heard from a mutual friend of ours, from a default friend, that you're going to be you have a guest coming up, and you're probably going to get deplatformed. And so then, like, this won't even be good for promotion because your podcast will be like stripped from the internet. So
Man, I'm
try and
thinking, who
release
the
this
hell?
episode before you release that episode.
Oh man, now I'm wondering like, who. Oh no, I think I mentioned to her that I'd like to have
A nice
Jared.
Japanese man.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I guess you could call him that. Jared Taylor on the show. I mean, just to be very frank with you, if that's it's kind of the thing. I want to have Jared Taylor on the show actually, but I also don't want the show to get shit canned. So I don't know. I'm still debating it. I haven't talked to him, but some people, obviously told me, "Oh, you have to do it. It's not going to be subversive if you don't do it." I mean, it's also not going to be subversive if I don't get to do it anymore, so you kind of have to walk that line.
No, that's a real tension. I mean, does that happen? Do people say that to you a lot? Like where it's like, okay, like you need to have like a more and more like unacceptable people on, or else you're not like living up to your brand. But at the same time, it's like after 2018, like, getting kicked off the internet became so like such a matter of course that like you have to factor it in to some extent, right? You don't want to get totally deplatformed,
Yeah. I mean, I like doing the podcast. It's, a fun thing. It's, the thing is, I know that I'd probably be able to come back in some other form, but just to build back up to this point, it sucks. So, I'm trying to be a little bit esoteric in my guest choice. And, in total, I don't think there's any view that Jared Taylor has espoused that the combination of guests that I've had on my show have not, in part, communicated by themselves, but
this is very true. This is very
probably more moderate than a lot of guests you've had on.
He's just radioactive, so I don't necessarily think that it would add a lot to the conversation, except for a huge risk factor for me. And
what if? Okay, hear me out. What if you did a video interview where he had like the glasses and the mustache nose disguise, and you just had a totally different name for him, and then
Jared Jailer,
and just proceeded to interview him like just
with a voice mod, but like higher pitch. I think that would
no,
be
not even
better.
Not even the voice mod. That's like too like no. It has to be less plausible. It just has to be like this terrible disguise, like a Clark Kent Superman, just like a thick pair of glasses or something, and then you're just like oh, I've never heard of you before. What are your opinions on controversial topics, Mr. Jailer? And just let him, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, that might be a good way to spin it, I mean, I think the people who hunt for Jared Taylor online and try to, get people canned from, they wouldn't even think to search for, Jared Taylor.
We're fooling the algorithms here, yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, if you go through with it, you're very brave. When we start our podcast, we're going to sell out completely, and we're going to become like Ron DeSantis, Mitch McConnell Republicans.
Ron DeSantis and Mitch McConnell in the same. It's impossible. Isn't Ron DeSantis the second coming? Isn't he supposed to save?
He is. Yes, we love Ron DeSantis. He's going to save America.
Yeah.
The money's been deposited directly into the future Moldovan trust fund.
Yeah, you're going to use Ron DeSantis' money to get to Moldova when the shit hits the fan. But yeah, I mean, in the preamble to this, I was trying to maybe dissuade you from going to Moldova. I mean, I've been to Moldova, and I mean, I don't know. It's probably better than inner city Chicago, but it's not much better. I don't know. You could trade up. There are nicer places to go to. Romania is pretty good. It's bigger. I don't know.
When I picked the screen name, I was just trying to pick the worst European country.
Yes, you did. Awesome.
It's probably there probably are a lot of places in America that are still nicer than Moldova, but there's also like a lot that aren't.
Yeah, and the trend line for Moldova is going up, while, I mean, as far as I know, most places in America are kind of on the downslope. So I don't know.
Is that why you picked? So wait, is picking Moldova supposed to be a kind of like commentary that like I prefer one of the worst like European locations over most of the places in America? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and just like, naming Eastern European countries is funny.
That is funny. I did watch. Well, no, after you changed your name to that, or maybe a little after that, I watched a few YouTube videos of just people like touring through, like I don't know, like maybe one or two major cities there.
Like 10 hours walking the streets of what is it? Now? How do you say it?
Yeah.
Chisinau.
Oh
Chisinau.
no! Don't
Sorry.
do that. Don't do that to him. He's gonna have enough trouble getting around.
Yeah.
But then I agreed with him totally. I was like, oh, this place really is paradise. This is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. The people are gorgeous. Look at those walkable cities. Oh yeah, I was absolutely entranced. I just thought this was so much better than anything I've ever seen in him. Just to let people know, I'm like totally ignorant, but if you really compare it like genuinely to like a typical like American big city,
To like Cincinnati.
yeah, no,
it's way
like
better.
you can say like Alex from like personal knowledge that like it may not be that good, but it act like superficially at least it looks much better.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
just like an honest
it
appraisal,
probably is better in some ways. I mean, the thing is, Moldova is a strange territory because there's the Republic of Moldova and there's also kind of Romanian Moldova, a part of Romania that's essentially called Moldova, and people speak, a little bit of Russian, speak kind of this heavily accented Romanian, and that part is very nice. It's quite nice. It's a bit richer. The thing is, in Romania, the further west you go, the richer you are. And I live almost on the border to Hungary, so we're as rich as they get here, which is not much actually because it's still Romania. But I mean, I would recommend this direction if possible, just for quality of
Are
life
you an
reasons.
ethnic Romanian or are you an ethnic German or a Hungarian?
Yeah, I'm not much Romanian. I have some Romanian in me. I don't exactly know. The thing is with kind of genealogy here, it's a bit hard to trace. I also haven't tried hard enough. But according to 23andMe, and this is also kind of what I know from my family, is that I'm about a third German, a third Hungarian, and then the rest is kind of like Czech, Polish, Romanian as well, mystery meat, and some, ancestor that was Turkish, like 3 generations ago, and that's about it. So yeah, Central European on average, I guess, but not much Romanian. No.
Oh
So
man.
I don't know if that answers your question. It was
The
actually I took
Germans are
23andMe.
like the elite in Romania, right? They run everything. The president's German.
Yeah. True. Yeah, that's just how it is. I mean, we can't negotiate with that. But yeah, we were one of the few families that remained after the war because my grandfather, my part of the German family, my dad's side, he was in an internment camp from the Nazis, the local fascists. I don't know. He upset them with something. So when the communists came, he was like, okay, yeah, this guy's one of ours because he was a political prisoner under the fascist. So he wasn't persecuted for being German, but the rest of them were. So a lot of people just moved to Germany. So yeah,
Oh,
I
that sounds
mean,
like that's a great strategy. Just get arrested by the opposition, and then when they lose, everyone just
yeah.
assumes you must be like a
Three
diehard
three
opponent.
years in an internment camp. Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily like the funnest of strategies. But
No,
yeah, I
it's a
mean,
long term.
worked
It's a
for
long
him.
con.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. Obviously, like sneaky German. Yeah, I mean, I did 23andMe because I had a sneaky suspicion that I had to be a little bit Jewish because a lot of the facts of my life I wanted to see like where does this insane verbosity come
You're
from?
on right-wing Twitter, so you're like, I must be
I have
partially
to be a little
Ashkenazi.
bit Ashkenazi. So I checked and absolutely zero, nothing, zilch. So yeah, I mean, I guess that answers my
Wow.
my
You have a
query.
podcast called Subversive, and you're not even a little bit
I
Jewish.
know. I I tried to see it. I really tried, but no. Apparently, yeah,
That is subversive for Twitter. That's
it is.
subversive for the right. Being
It
non
is.
being a non-Jewish right-wing person, that's actually subversive.
You were the only non-Jewish person at NatCon.
I mean, there were
But
so
there's
many Jewish
Hindus
people
there as
there.
well. Yeah.
Yeah. There are a handful of Hindus, me, Jewish, trad calves, a lot of Protestants as
Well, the
well.
Tradcasts are also Ashkenazi Jewish.
A lot of them, yes. And a lot of the old trad calves are converted Jews. So yeah, there's all sorts they come in all sorts. But yeah, I mean, NatCon was really, really fun for me. I know a lot of people, why did she go? She's endorsing whatever. And I got to go to Miami and meet a lot of people that I knew off the internet and give a speech to a ton of people that liked the speech. I mean, I don't know exactly what I'm endorsing or what I'm not, but it was really fun. And yeah, I just got to socialize after like 3 years in the COVID bunker and having, a small child. And I got like 3 days. Wow, cool. I can drink wine and talk about politics. So yeah, I
Was
don't
that
know.
the
For
first
me,
time you'd been to America?
yes, it was. It was.
How do you
Um,
speak like perfectly American accented English?
See, that's why I wondered about the Ashkenazi thing. It's just I'm very absorbent to language. I speak the same type of, the same level in German as well, and I just got that from watching TV. So yeah, I don't know. It comes to me. I just hear your people speak, and I internalize it, and then I repeat it back in podcast format. It's strange. So
We spoke to someone recently who was at NatCon, and they were just like ecstatic over it. They thought it was amazing. They were like, I was never in. It was like the first time I felt like I was at like a conference or like a large gathering of people that just were like all on the same page. I didn't go into more detail. I just thought, oh well, you're really happy over this, so I'm not gonna like ask like what exactly, like what was it that everyone was like united over.
yeah.
I
Everyone
wasn't
loved the
exactly
orgy
sure.
tent, I have to say. The cuddle puddle was awesome as well. But no.
Was Ayala there?
No, she wasn't invited. This is obviously a trad cath orgy.
Okay. She had
So
a planned talk, but it was considered too offensive.
yeah, no, she only goes to Hereticon, which is, the competitor in terms of outcasts. No, it was just really fun to, yeah, essentially that's very very well described, to be with people that, where your lingo doesn't need a preamble, where, if I talk about whatever arcane internet shit, people will be like, yes, exactly. And then they will continue from where I left off and, fill it in. And, you can have a different caliber of discussion with people like that. That's why I also have this podcast. So it's essentially having a 3 day long podcast with a lot of people, which is also exhausting, but it's also really fun. So I don't know. It's,
Yeah,
I
I've
enjoyed
never
it.
been. I plan to try to go to the next one. I like NatCon. I love Yoram Hazoni. I love Israel. I love national conservatism.
I mean, I'm happy you did. I don't know. Yeah, yeah, I get along really well with Yoram Hazoni. Actually, this is the second NatCon I was speaking at. I met him in Brussels. There was a NatCon Europe, the baby sister event of the big NatCon, and I was invited to speak there. And I, did my usual spiel about liberalism eating everything, and he really liked it, and he thought that I should come to America and do a slightly different version of my speech. So yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, I don't know. The thing about Yoram is that I have never met anyone who walks the walk as much as he does. Like, he travels with his whole extended family. I've met his sons, their wives, their babies. His wife, she's always there with him, and he's literally like a patriarch who, you know. Everyone's around him, and he's almost like just this biblical character. He's extremely, he's a
He's got
biblical
a
scholar,
mobile
obviously.
longhouse.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, he's very much the the head of the household there, and yeah, I don't know. It's interesting and quite cool to see someone living their principles and in quite such a committed
That's the
way.
intimidating thing about starting a podcast. Like, we have these spaces on Twitter, but if they're terrible, they just disappear into the ether. But with a podcast and what's going on your show, we have to. It's being recorded forever for posterity and for
Yeah, and I publish
Yoram
every
Hazoni to listen
podcast.
to later.
I've never not published a podcast. Even like the most abysmally shitty ones, I just publish them for the benefit of the person who comes
What's
on.
the shittiest one?
Tell us who you hated the most, who's ever been on your show, Alex. It's okay.
No, I and don't hate anyone. Obviously, I love the people coming on. I wouldn't invite them if they were. But some people are just have a bit of a difficulty with the podcast format. You can have an excellent poster, and then he gives me yes or no answers to stuff. And then I'm like, I've got notes. I've got maybe, a page or two of notes, but that runs out in 5 minutes if you're gonna yes no me. So you kind of have to run with it. That's a podcast thing. So I've had a few people who the podcast in the end wasn't too bad, but I had to gather like a lot of inner strength to just like invent stuff to talk about. And then, funnily enough, the people who commented afterwards, who were fans obviously of this person, they were like, why did she talk the whole time? I was like, you motherfucker.
Oh, she. Okay, now we know who it is.
No. Why did I talk the whole time? They wanted to hear the guy, but I was like, using my mental pliers to pull stuff out of this person, and they just wouldn't talk. They would just be like, yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
So what does your one-page sheet say for us? Because we did no prep at all.
Okay, I've got a one-page sheet, and this is, sometimes like for this, I could imagine this going in many directions, but I've got, obviously, it says, it's just very like bullet pointed. So I've got night owls, obviously, to talk about the podcast, talk about your spaces. Then I have the question of, is neo-reaction still a good lens that we should view politics through? I want to put this to you. Then I've got some questions. I mean, the general point about Burnham. I know you guys are into Burnham. I know Nightmare Vision's into Burnham. South Africa. I read this 4chan thing today about, some Russian guys going through the center of Johannesburg and it being just like not even post-apocalyptic, but post-apocalyptic. And so, yeah, that was interesting. Yeah. Rosedale, obviously, this is a very fruitful direction it could take. Right-wing art, the next step for the US and the West, the Longhouse and how does one swerve it if one can, effective altruism, new Twitter, AI doomerism, gatekeeping, conflation between IQ and human worth, genetically enhanced children.
You gotta give us this page. This is what we're just gonna steal all of this. We're gonna use this page for like a year's worth of our content.
Friends, I've been doing podcasts for years now. You're talking to a pro. Obviously, I've got notes of the wazoo here. I can send you all sorts of strange things. Because, like I said, you guys don't have like some, big book that we have to talk about so that you can sell it. You got a podcast that's coming up. So, we're going to sell the podcast.
Okay, let me ask then, since you brought up neo-reaction.
Yeah.
Okay, can I ask this? Did you tweet at least part of the talk you gave at NatCon as like a thread once?
No, but it was published. My NatCon speech was published in the American Mind and in the European Conservative. So it was an article.
Because I was wondering when you had this Twitter thread that I think it was like around the time of NatCon. It might have been right after. And so I was interested because I just figured that to some extent it like reflected your experience there. Like, you know what I mean? Like it was like very shortly thereafter. And because I don't really know what people that were talking about or what the general mood was. And it was basically like a Twitter thread that was, I guess it was somewhat neo-reactionary, just in the sense that like the point was about, the kind of insufficiency of like, classical liberalism, talking about things like, manipulated procedural outcomes and stuff, and about how like going forward, whatever, the right ought to be, it needs to be much more substantial than just like a kind of like rear guard action, like trying to hold the center
the
together.
Principal agent problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was wondering if that's what you were referencing when you brought up like neo-reaction, because I also wanted to know if you did talk about like something like that with other people like NatCon, like how did that go over? Do people find that to be like very insightful now? Like does that like strike people as like, oh yes, this is like people haven't been doing this correctly for a very long time, and they should start doing it like this instead.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an insight that's, I would say, about 70% of people there would have had some form of that insight and would have agreed with some form of either call it neo-reaction, or maybe a kind of softer would be like post-liberalism. Like people don't believe that you can rewind the clock to classical liberalism, for the reasons we know, because classical liberalism is what led to progressive liberalism. It's just a nice continuation on the same trend line. So I think that's kind of, I mean, the thing is there that, a lot of people there were very religious. And when you add religion to the mix, it's very hard to disentangle it from their political perspective. Some were integralists, some obviously thought that there should be some form of religious morality in politics as a basis for politics. Yeah, I mean, that's not necessarily the pure NRX version, which doesn't necessarily involve religion. It involves some form of exterior standard represented in the monarch/CEO, but it doesn't necessarily have to be like a religious standard. But I think that's kind of the conclusion that most of the people there had, that there has to be an exterior standard that's set in stone in some way, possibly religious, but it can't be at the whim of progress or whatever force that you
Are
want
you
to.
religious?
Am I religious? I'm not. Not really. I'm struggling with my faith, to be honest. I'm Catholic. I'm doing my best to be a good Catholic, but I'm finding it harder here because, to be honest, the congregations here, they're mostly Hungarian. I don't speak Hungarian. Romanian Catholicism here is just like it's vanishingly rare. So yeah, I mean, there used to be a German parish here, but just there's not any more Germans here. Yeah, so it's a bit hard to actually go to church. But yeah, I mean, I'm working on it. I guess that's my response to this.
Well, the reason I brought that up is because I was just interested, actually, less so in like the theoretical grounding, like whether it's founded in some like religious principle or something like that. I was just more interested practically, if like more people who have access to like the mainstream of the American right would realize that like the kind of way they go about their business is insufficient practically,
Yeah.
where like complaining about hypocrisy and always appealing. There's a constant refrain, and it as things get worse, it gets excuse me, it gets more and more difficult to like witness, because as things get worse, people still do this thing where they're like appealing to some sort of like hypothetical fair um, judge or ruler that
Are you
does
just like trying to like tactfully ask like how extreme the people are at that kind of behind closed doors?
Not really, because a lot of that stuff doesn't really go anywhere, right? Like you can say things that are extreme behind closed doors, but I'm not even looking for like some sort of like exaggerated extremism. I just mean like to the extent that like, you know, uh would like mainstream conservatives ever actually start being smarter about these things, where it's like, okay, there's nobody to appeal to. You see that on Twitter all the time, like, people will say like, oh well, you know this is violating this principle, and then you stop and you're like, well, no one cares about this principle anymore, and no one's going to listen to you. Or like, some some like kind of conservative journalist or someone like that will be talking about like how can these like mainstream American institutions regain trust and regain credibility and regain the faith of the American people. And you're just like, but these institutions hate you, and they're never, you know what I mean? Like that's the wrong question. Like you should just be trying to either circumvent them or eliminate them. And there's this constant like pretense that yeah, like we still are governed by people that are fundamentally fair to every portion of the population. And I feel like some of the NRX stuff that you brought up in that one thread, and probably your NatCon speech, I'm assuming, was like critiquing that like that's not really the way to think about these things, because it's a little bit naive and it just opens you up to uh, constantly losing like all the time. And I just don't. I'm kind of interested. I wonder like how much that's maybe perhaps like penetrated the consciousness of like more visible mainstream figures, which I don't
Yeah.
really know. I don't talk to
Yeah.
anybody.
I think there kind of strata at NatCon, obviously. There's some, more establishment figures, relatively big names. There are people kind of in the middle who are kind of these, thinking, talking heads, and more alternative, right? Not alt right, but just like not necessarily mainstream guys. Like, Pedro Gonzalez was there. He didn't speak at NatCon, but he's kind of has his own. He's like a Burnham
Pedro
type, Sam
Gonzalez
Francis
definitely
type.
not alt right. He is
No, he's not.
extremely
All right, but just
classical liberal.
I hate that alternative right has just been like loaded with so much bullshit. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Pedro's a classical liberal. I mean, his most beloved character is
Dead center
Sam
of the political
Sam
spectrum.
Francis. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe he. To be honest, I haven't followed his stuff recently, and he might have drifted more towards whatever classical liberalism. But he definitely wasn't that
No,
classical.
you don't have to worry. You have nothing to worry about, Alex. We're just teasing.
Oh,
He's
okay.
nowhere near the center. It's fine.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think most people there who weren't like these bigger establishment people, because I would say 10% there were like people who like some of the ideas coming from NatCon. They see NatCon as a better resistance to whatever the woke is, but they really haven't digested all of this very well. But I would say most of the people, the vast majority there, knew kind of what time it is and knew about the fact that the right has been ignoring the most important dimension in politics for almost forever, which is power. You can't, like you said, you can't appeal to an external standard when the external standard is set by people who hate your guts and what you did.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. So I mean, the consideration of power was very much something that people were thinking about, and how to use power was the subject of a lot of the talks as well. Mine was about more how to see power and how to not be fooled by the illusion of power. This is kind of my shtick. It's essentially kind of you can't out liberalism. You're within the enemy's frame and you're just like swimming like crazy in a circle, and you're not never going to get out of this. So you have to step outside and use power upon the system. So, but other people were like, okay, what can we do? What has worked? Rufo style approaches where you kind of want to enact your will in the current system, but obviously you're not going to get that through a vote. So how do you get there? So there are a lot of speeches on that, and in different industries and school board meetings and all sorts of levels of how to actually do that. So
those are good
I don't know.
questions. Those are good questions to be asking. I mean, no, basically none of the like social revolutionary upheavals that America's experienced in the past like 70 years have been the result of just people voting. Like, it's basically never the case that someone's like just proposing like, hey, do you want to like radically upend these aspects of your life in these like incredibly destructive ways, and then people just go out and like vote yes, like en masse. That's pretty much never how it happens. It's always through activists, NGOs, lawyers, the Supreme Court in a lot of instances. And so yeah, it just becomes like, even as a young person, you're growing up in like the 2010s or whatever, to see people who are older, who should like theoretically know better, still talking about these like kind of like open, publicly accessible means of like enacting your political agenda. It just starts to come off like a bit like tedious after a while, where it's like, okay, like obviously the people responsible for all these changes didn't really care about any of that. They just did what they wanted. I mean, not to say that you should be like totally ruthless, but they really just like ignored. They like pretty much in almost every case like ignored the direct will of the people whenever it was registered publicly.
How'd you like Miami?
Um, I liked it, but the problem was I was there was just so much to do at the conference that I just spent most of the time at the hotel. I went to Publix a few times. It's pretty good.
Did you meet
And
Bolsonaro? Was he there yet?
no, he wasn't. Oh, I wish it looks just like
Publix is
the
really,
Publix I
really
went to.
nice. Publix is not an accurate representation of America. Like, if only America was as nice as Publix, if America was like generally like Publix, we'd be in a much better position.
Publix
Yeah.
nationalism. Citizen, can you tell what strikes you about Publix? What's so good about Publix? I'm not familiar.
It's so clean. I'm told the sandwiches are very nice.
Yeah.
It's just a great experience going to Publix.
Just a nice sandwich in a clean environment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it does seem like because that's I met Catherine D there as well, and we hung out quite a lot, and she was kind of telling me all the ways in which Miami is not a realistic view upon what America looks like. It's kind of a strange, enclave in itself, but there were some things. I mean, just like the cars, like the car centric everything. Not very walkable, to be honest. I tried to go to a mall to get my hair done before my speech because, the humidity.
Well, that's
anyway.
very representative of America. Nowhere in America is very walkable.
Yeah, but it was just like, oh, it's 5 minutes from the hotel. Okay, that's easy. So it took me about half an hour, obviously, to cross all this, and then obviously you can't really get into the mall except for the parking lot, I think. And there's not like a normal door where you could just go in by foot. And then I went through this like labyrinthine parking lot and got lost like 5 times. And yeah, it was a whole thing. But I made it, and I saw a gazillion lizards. So I also had like a wildlife experience. So yeah, that was Miami for me. Extreme humidity as well. It was absolutely nuts. But yeah, it was interesting. It was nice.
Miami, yeah, it's definitely not like the rest of America. Although I don't know if it's if it's nicer than the rest of America or worse than the rest of America. You know, years ago when I was younger, it was just perceived as like a little enclave of Latin America. But I don't know, does that make them better or worse than the rest of America?
It's like
I don't
that's
know
what
at
they
this
always
point.
are, and then like 30 years ago that made them worse, but now it's making them better as everything else deteriorates around it. It's not raising up; everything around it is sinking tremendously.
That's a good point.
The
Yeah, I
discourse
mean,
about walkable cities is very interesting. I mean, that's a debate that happens all the time
mhm.
on right wing Twitter. It's been happening, for at least like since 2016. Uh, yeah, I personally would think that's a problem, but it's kind of been like the walkable city discourse. It kind of got just like hijacked by the left. If you want walkable cities, what you actually have to have is not, you just have to have law and order, because, the reason America doesn't have walkable cities is because of, crime. That's why we can't have them. But anytime walkable cities discourse gets brought up, it's never about that. It's about, just more, spending. Because you can build, you can have like massive public works projects, but they're just going to get filled up with homeless drug addicts.
No, it is very interesting because I feel like maybe 2016 or even a little bit after, you would see people who were like generally right wing bring up urban planning, and they would mention things like walkable cities, but then in like the past 3 years, like trans people and like democratic socialists like stole the concept of walkable cities, and they turned it into this like giant middle finger to the concept of a car. And so now like there's all this anti-car content and like anti-highway content. And so they've turned walkable cities from like what Citizen was just talking about, where it should be like something that you want because it's like it engenders like high trust and like good community, clean living, safety, like law and order, all of those things. And they just they like turned it into this like just I don't know, just it's like purely just about cars. And so it's like an anti-industry, and there's no real social component to it. And then also they like obviously their entire ideology is built upon like ignoring the largest elephants in the room, things like crime, which they just at this point unironically support. And so now you see people on Twitter where they see that and they're like, oh, now I hate walkable cities. um I love highways. I love having to get in my car to do absolutely anything. And it's just like it's not really true, but
I
you kind
love
of
I love Breezewood, Pennsylvania.
I love the Breezewood does that it really flipped. It like completely inverted. We're all pro Breezewood now. We will fight and die for that truck stop. Absolutely.
There's there's also kind of a component here about a lot of Europe obviously is taken as an example for walkable cities and stuff, but uh, most cities in Europe were built way before cars, and they just organically were built for little buggies and stuff like that, and have that design because that's just the way people used to live. And then now modern people live in them, and then obviously it's charming and great in that way. But the thing is, even cities that were built, like we have cities here that are built under communism, they're much less walkable. They're mostly like these huge boulevards. They're kind of like people say Paris is walkable, or Barcelona, but they're just kind of these intersecting, big boulevards and, much more car
I
centric.
saw a very interesting TikTok. I don't know if it's true about the Romanian subway system and how there wasn't a subway stop at the university because Ceausescu's wife was like, those like hippies should walk to school. They don't need a subway stop.
Really? And I didn't know about that. It might be true. To be honest, I live in the other side of Romania, so my Bucharest lore is very very limited. Not sure, but it might be. I mean, the Ceausescu's wife was very much a character. She was someone who just had 4 school years. I mean, four classes, and then she got her idea was to present herself as this scientist woman, because this was kind of a big trope under communism that, obviously,
Women in
egalitarianism.
STEM.
Yeah, women in STEM, which is really huge. And she said that she was a chemist. And I think they faked some degree of her, but then she was like showered with, Dr. Honoris Causa from all sorts of places, honorary degrees and stuff like that. So, she was like a doctor in chemistry by the end of her life. But then obviously after communism fell, the whole story came to light that, this is all a big sham, and she could barely read and write. But she had all sorts of strange programs.
Just like women in STEM.
Just like America right now.
Yeah, I mean, in a more dramatic, garish Eastern European way, but yes, pretty much. Yeah, I have to say. Yeah, and the thing is, I've known women who wanted to be programmers, wanted to go into math. There's always kind of a bit of a chip on the shoulder component there. It was rarely the thing, oh my God, I've always been so passionate about math. They were competent, they like to do, they're good enough to get in. But it was never like, oh my God, this is my calling. It was like, I have to stick it to the man to, prove that I can do this and that, be the first of this kind to do this. And it just always felt like, I feel like you're going to live to regret this.
Here's a bunch of autistic men enjoying something. I have to get involved with it. And actually, I'm not actually interested in it. So I'm just going to make it about feminism instead, even though that has nothing to do with whatever the autistic
that's the
interest
blueprint. That's the beginning of the end of everything. Yeah, that's pretty much the blueprint that has always followed.
Yeah, it's
except you, Alex. You're all right. You can do a right wing podcast. You're fine.
Again, I guess. Thank you, thank you. I've got dispensation from.
I'm thinking. Hold on. I'm still thinking about this. The urbanism. I don't really pay attention to urbanism discourse, but one of my problems.
Well, I was going to say I'm pretty like I'm like mildly. I'm pretty anti-car. Like that's not the problem. That the left is anti-car. The problem is really just they won't tackle crime. So
no, actually, it's the opposite. They want more, but also like the thing I was going to bring up is like just at a theoretical basis. I feel like I don't know how you have a basis of like real political power in a culture where there is no real community, not like the leftist meme version of community where it's like just people that like get together over their fetish or like whatever their personality deviancy is. Like actual communities of like people who like live near each other, bear some sort of relationship to each other, kind of like stay in one place over a period of time. I feel like that's what I mean. I don't know if other people point this out in like urbanism discourse or whatever, but doesn't it seem like a way to like politically weaken people or render them more impotent where like they actually can't like literally organize because they're spread so thin or because there's no long term for wherever they are.
Yeah, I think, now most people organize around just like memes that they see from far away that are being hyped in through the airways of this or that, whatever medium that they like to listen to. But, that's how you have, you're at the table with your relatives on whatever Christmas, Thanksgiving, and then like everyone has a different political, that just wouldn't have happened, everyone used to be Protestant in the household. And now they all have their own flavor of whatever. And I think, living apart is a big factor as well. But it's just, even in the same house, your children are being brainwashed while you make dinner because they're looking at whatever.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah,
on the internet. So yeah, it definitely helps to have people so separate. But
yeah, you have less of a stake in the future of things. It's just like, well, moving is always an option. Citizen's going to flee to Moldova. He should be barred from that. He should be forced to have to stay where he is, fight or die. like conquer or bleed, like it just seems, yeah, like I feel like that's one of the aspects that goes overlooked because people talk about like, convenience and like, city design or whatever. And I just think like, for instance, like people talk about Florida, and especially in the midterms, the 2022 midterms, they would be like, oh, well, so many people have moved to Florida that they're like turning it red. Right. And like, so it's not like people don't understand the concept of, you know, like large numbers of people living like close to each other who are able to actually like have a political impact specifically because they're living in the same area. And, I just feel like generally that should apply like everywhere. And so when you don't have that at all, I just don't see how you can build any kind of like real lasting political power.
Yeah, I think this is kind of a larger point with liberalism in general. The idea that we can all have our quirky little preference in every sort of thing, and then that somehow we can all live together at the end of the day. You got your own religion, you got your own whatever whole preference, or whatever's interesting this year. Gender skin suit that you put on. You got colors of the rainbow on your head. The idea that at the end of the day we are going to be congruent enough to even inhabit the same space is
You're absolutely right, Alex. We are doomed. There is no hope because of social media and the internet. That's a problem when talking about politics. It's like actually there's no hope. Like it can't be fixed, but you just have to like pretend that like hypothetically if it could be fixed, like what could we do? And
exactly Red Caesar.
probably like walkable cities. I mean, just look at like whenever I see on the news, I see like you know right wing protest in Europe, whether it was like the protest that happened a couple years ago in Germany against immigration, or like the yellow vests in France, and then those protests don't exist in America because everyone lives like far away in the suburbs, and if they did exist, if you can get some people to come out for like a right wing protest, you're usually very dysgenic. Whereas in Europe, everyone's it's much more optical.
Yeah, they look like
So
normal people that like left their house and it's like, yo, I'm going to this protest. Like I'm really mad about something. And they're just like regular citizens. Yeah, they don't. Yeah, you're absolutely right. They don't look like freaks that are like bust in. That's like one of the spectacles that also goes overlooked. Like I feel like, yeah, like the yellow vest stuff, or even the anti-COVID stuff, even in Canada, but also what was it in the Netherlands too? With like farmers, was that I
Yeah.
forget exactly where it was, but every time I look at some of these things, or they're like you're scrolling on Twitter and you're watching footage of this, they all do look relatively normal. They look like people who are there with a purpose. They have a real reason to be there. And then when you look at like American activism, it's like it is so much worse. Yeah, it is very dysgenic. The people look like freaks. I have no idea where they come from. They're certainly not people that have like a very deep interest in like the community where the thing is taking place. Like leftists are notorious for this. They just like Antifa just gets like shipped all over the place. And they're just like the dregs of human society, like possibly the lowest human capital ever to exist in human history, are like these people. But because they're able to do this more effectively, they kind of like just show up and it works, because you don't see that in America, where like with the yellow vest or something, where people just look like they went into another city next to them, like interrupting their normal life. No, like that's not, they never look that normal in America. It looks much yeah, it's much worse looking.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the two guys Kyle Rittenhouse happened to run into at the protest, the mostly peaceful protest, were just like baby rapist and
Yeah.
some just like serial criminal, and I guess another guy who's like a milder version of that. But yeah,
And no
that's
one really suffered. Like they kind of get away with that. Like that's not like those weren't the only those weren't the only guys. Like they couldn't possibly have been the only people there with that level of like a sordid past. Like it probably characterized like a sizable chunk of that crowd. Like how are you going to randomly shoot like three people and two of them are like predators with, or like they have like awful like sexual abuse histories or something like that. Um, but the problem is like especially in America, they just don't ever seem to get punished for it. Like in 2020, it was like mostly successful. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't this like giant kind of reckoning where it's like, how come all your activists are like deviants, or they have really long rap sheets, or like they abuse young children, or et cetera, et cetera. That never really happens. So it is really bad, but it's like effective at the same time because there's no real mechanism of punishment.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't understand this. I'll ask you guys because you're American. You probably know more about this than I do. But isn't there like a three strikes thing? These people seem to have like 23 strikes and they're still out there, partying in the street. Like, what is there any sort of way to just like end recidivism through X amount of strikes, or what exactly is there? Or have I just been watching too much whatever Law and Order, and
I think
I
that
don't
was
get it.
only in California, but I doubt they even do it in California. I mean, it's like if you've been yeah, I don't know the specifics, but they're definitely not doing that anymore. This definitely was never like a nationwide policy.
So the
Hmm.
feeling of
I used to
being
get like so angry because like
Sounds
liberals.
good. I'm like, this should be the way. Three strikes and you're dead. That's
Yeah, there
pretty much.
hasn't been a push for that in a while, but that used to be a bigger part of the discourse, like maybe like 10 years ago. But I remember getting like so angry because liberals like hated that, and they would always be like, they'd bring up some example of a guy who got like life in jail, and they'd be like, he got life in jail for stealing a pack of gum because of
Three
three strike
times.
laws. And it's like, well, what were the first two? And like the first two strikes are like like aggravated assault and like rape, and it's like, but they just say like, oh, he went to jail for stealing gum. It's like kind of like and rape and aggravated assault.
like all together, we graded on cumulatively. The way it feels, I don't know, the way I'll describe it, citizen, you correct me if I'm wrong. It feels like in America, if you were like an upstanding, law-abiding citizen, like a minor infraction, depending on who it's like to, could like totally upend your life and just like completely destroy everything. And you have no idea how far the punitive measures will go. But then also there's like a separate class of people who are just like criminals, like in and out. Like if even like they're not committing a crime right now, but they like were last month and they will be next month. And it feels like there is no, like their lives are terrible, but at the same time, like the punishment of jail is kind of like a joke. Like not really, you're not necessarily like derailing someone's life. Like when we, when I was young, the idea of like the whole
Yeah, it's not
concept
that
of
they aren't being punished, although sometimes they are
yeah,
being not
exactly.
punished and they're being let off completely. But like oftentimes we do punish criminals, but it's not enough, and it like doesn't matter because it's not. Yeah, it's not an inconvenience to them. Their lives are going to be terrible no matter what. So.
Yeah, like the idea of jail theoretically. I mean, I guess maybe that wasn't what it used to be, but when you're young in America, the idea is that jail is like this terrible thing because it's like going to derail your life. Like you don't want to do it because you have like a life track that's going to be like disrupted terribly. But then like when you actually, you live around people like that for a long time and you realize, oh no, that's not true. That's just more like kind of ridiculous liberal propaganda that like everyone has this like necessarily successful life track that's going to be disrupted by jail. Like, no, they were probably going to have really terrible lives. And then the people themselves know it. Like citizen, I know you see, like you've seen people, they're like in and out of jail. They're like, they don't really care. They kind of know like, oh yeah, like my life was roughly going to be like this. I'm fine with this.
And we should primarily, and it'd be good for them to be in jail. We'd be doing them a favor.
Absolutely.
And primarily we should do it for the sake of the law-abiding people. I don't want to like frame it as like we're helping these homeless drug addicts, but it would help them too. Coincidentally, like that's like the best place for them. It's the best place for them being there is the best for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kafefe Anand brought this up on the podcast. Like, there's a statistic about the British killing off like 1% of their most criminal population for decades on end. I don't know exactly when, the 1600s or something like that, and crime dropped like precipitously after that. It was just the fact that you eliminate people from that risk pool. Obviously, I'm sure this is, it was very much a let the chips fall where they may type policy. Not a lot of bleeding heart liberalism in there, but it served a purpose at a grand scale. And I feel like most governments nowadays are just doing the opposite. They're just encouraging the multiplication of the problem in more ways than one. I mean, not only through the fact that prisons, just like a slap on the wrist or completely ineffective, like you said. You know, they're not interested
everywhere
in it.
except El Salvador.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I might have
should
to become
we emulate El
future
Salvador?
Salvadorian citizen.
That's actually probably more realistic.
You could probably get the president of El Salvador on your podcast.
Absolutely.
Cool. Nice. So what's the deal with El Salvador? I have no idea about that.
Really? You don't?
No, I really don't know. What
Don't
is?
say
Are
things
they
like that.
very punitive? Please go off.
He's they just got like like an awesome dictator who puts he put a percentage of the population, he put like 1% of the population in jail.
Yeah, nice and British. That's the ticket. He's probably read that Covfefe Anon post. He's like,
He
1%,
might have.
He probably
that's what it takes.
He followed me. He literally logged off from his Groiper alt.
It might even be Covfefe. You never know. This man is a mystery. So
this is one of talking about this. This is like one of the jokes of like political extremism, quote unquote. Like like we get together on these podcasts, like everyone's like a dissident because there's so much heat. Everyone's like they're afraid, but like actually all these problems are like not intractable at all. They're like relatively solvable. We just have like this giant, extremely powerful, dumb ideology that's like standing in the middle of everybody, and like no one can like point it out, or else their lives will get ruined or something like that. But like in a real way, like you're not even extremist. You're just like, no, yeah, this like everyone else is kind of an extremist. You're like a normal person. It's like, well, no,
that's like a recurring theme of our spaces, and probably will be on our podcast as well. The fact that there's been all this talk for the past decade about the right becoming radicalized, but really the left has become much more radicalized than there's no contest. They believe some crazy ass shit now that was beyond the pale.
Wanting to put criminals in jail like long term, like people who are like violent offenders or whatever. Like if that gets branded as like a fascist belief in the next 5 years, people will like go on Twitter and be like, yeah, I'm a fascist. I believe that like violent criminals should be in prison for their crimes. And so like you have to do that to an extent, because it's like one of the only rhetorical tactics available to you is to kind of like just heighten the dialectic. So it's like, yeah, like I'm a like, yeah, you're.
I that's why my name is Mainstream Views. My views are. I want violent criminals in jail, and not to sterilize children.
Yeah, exactly. It's that you become like relatively extremist, but your extremism is kind of like an inside joke a bit, because yeah, you just know that like, well, these actually aren't extreme. You're just kind of like maintaining a kind of baseline that keeps getting further and further away from the actual power in the country. And so yeah, you're stuck going like, oh, I guess every year I become that much more of a dangerous, violent, insane extremist, even though like I basically my beliefs haven't really changed much.
Yeah, I think for like an inside perspective, it's good, especially if you're anonymous. I think my approach to this is to simply just refuse to use their frame. Like racism. Someone comes to me, calls me a racist. I'm like, I don't accept your your word usage. What exactly?
Yes,
I'm not even gonna.
I'm a liberal moderate. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just, the sensible center. So yeah, no, I'm.
You tell them racism was a word made up by Leon Trotsky in 1925.
Exactly. Racism itself, is how our enemies describe us. We're realists. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's hard to not step into the frame of the so-called enemy, but it's just I think it's just good to cultivate our own language as well. Just build the frame, because, like you said, I mean, this really isn't anything outlandish or strange. It's just strange within their frame. It's
and what
literally...
the left and what the mainstream of society and what like Joe Biden promotes, that actually is very strange, and it's very things that would have seemed beyond the pale, just bizarre 10 years ago. Completely unrestricted immigration. I don't know if you know this about my personal lore, but I used to be like a leftist activist. I was in the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, and when I was in it, like 2014, 2015. Yeah, there were like debates about like, well, should like kids be able to be trans? And like everyone was like, of course not. There'd be like some obnoxious activist being like, well, we have to, we have to have trans healthcare for children, but like the majority of people like in these far left organizations were like, that's crazy, like no. And it's amazing how, but that went from something that like that like the leadership of the DSA was like, that's obviously crazy, to something that Joe Biden believes in the course of a decade.
And then we're stuck like rhetorically because like I don't know, I don't have like this really sexy, compelling term for people that think like violent prisoners should like stay in jail for their whole life. You know what I mean? Like I don't have this. Like we've never like you're constantly in this position where like I didn't think I would have to come up with like a term to describe that because everyone believed it while I was like still alive, just like 20 years ago or 15 years ago or something like that. And so you're caught out in this like rhetorically weak position because you're asked. It's like if someone asks you, this happens to like normal Republican conservative people all the time. Like someone will be like, hey, like you have these beliefs, traditional or whatever. Yeah, violent offenders should be put in jail or this and that, like talking about trans kids or whatever. And then someone will be like, okay, rationally justify all of your beliefs to me right now. And it's like, that's not how society works. Like most people just grow up, it's like a fish in water, right? You kind of just grow up like you're given these assumptions, they're like a background. And like that's good, right? You shouldn't be the type of person, if you are genuinely the type of person who's like genuinely asking what's the rationale for like every single social taboo, you probably have like there's something wrong with you, right? Like it's good to just like embrace like like an incest taboo. You don't just like ask that, which is funny, right? Because a few years ago, all the Twitch streamers were actually arguing over incest, trying to rationally justify because like they actually got lost in this. Well, can we even justify all of our beliefs and the taboos that we had? And they started getting lost in like the very questions that like if people were asking you that in real life, you would be like, oh, this person's like slightly mentally ill. And so you don't actually have the ability to like rhetorically counter this sometimes because you're like, well, I never had to think about it in those terms because I didn't know that it would be under this like constant ideological assault.
Yeah.
Like, the average person on the street would just be like, yeah, if you like rape and murder someone, you should be like killed, or you should just be like no one should ever be able to see you again. You should never see the light of day again. Or like Citizen was talking about, like DSA, like were they anti, you know, like child transitioning or whatever, something like that, out of some ideological commitment? Probably not, right? They were just like culturally like, oh, I never thought about that. That sounds horrifying. I just believe this, and this, right? Like I don't believe that. And then when they got attacked by it, they had absolutely no defense, right? And so it's like, in like less than a decade, they're just like, oh, I guess I believe this now. And so yeah, you're caught out. Like I don't have a term to describe a person who believes what everyone believed a very short while ago in the face of someone who's asking them to like give a perfectly coherent justification for why we shouldn't just eliminate this practice like
Yeah,
forever.
because
And so the changes happen.
yeah, because liberalism sets the null hypothesis. You constantly have to go against the null hypothesis is that everyone should be free to do whatever the hell they want. So that essentially begs the question of, you have to constantly, the burden of proof is for you if you want to defend any sort of social practice, especially on that, is doesn't really have this super rational like polyamory. You can go about rationally defending polyamory, bringing all sorts of arguments from tribes and stuff, but things that might be constraining or not inclusive, like a lot of traditional practices, traditional communities. Those, you have a huge burden of proof. Why shouldn't we liquidate this practice? Because it doesn't let everyone do whatever the hell they want
This is
anytime they
partially
want.
why it's over. This is like a big reason why it's over because we no longer have that kind of instinctual bias toward like the way things have been done. We're kind of like ideologically unmoored, and so the only way people
Well,
are
as a
going to
society, we're not unmoored anymore. We're ideologically anchored in just the stupid direction that
yeah. And so we're just going to learn how wrong all of this is in the long term, with like lots and lots of suffering and decline, and just it's going to do so much damage, like just an unspeakable amount of damage, even long after we're dead. And
but maybe 400 years from now, someone will come along and be like, why shouldn't I
yes,
allow my child to go through natural puberty? And people will just be like, well, that's just the way it is. And then they'll be like unable to defend it. And they'll be like, I guess kids can go through natural puberty again.
This is why, no, what they're going to do, Alex, we have a plan. Citizen had an ingenious idea. What they're going to do 400 years from now is they're going to stumble upon gold-plated physical copies of UN's articles and Taki Bag articles that we're going to physically replicate and just bury very deep in the earth. So after we're all done and it's been over for so long, someone can pick it up and we can finally be back.
The Angel Maroney.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of our knowledge of ancient history is based on, coins and manuscripts that were left in airtight chambers. That's actually like a very like limited amount of things. So we should somebody, Peter Thiel or somebody should be dedicating resources to, writing down our version of what's going on and placing it, writing it down on big metal plates and or putting it in airtight rooms. That's like really overlooked. If you can do that, it doesn't immediately pay off, but down the road, it's a huge benefit.
He who digs up Steve Saylor's entire over in stone, chiseled in stone, 500 feet underground, he owns the future.
Yeah, that reminds me of kind of like Carl Sagan's, I think it was on the Voyager, Messages to the Aliens. It was, I don't know, whatever, Beethoven, stuff like that. But I think, Taki Mag articles are just as worthy, sprinkle of Ann culture in deep space.
Yeah, because
Like,
then the aliens would be like, oh, wow, these people are very intelligent. They have
based.
such a great understanding of themselves. We should go visit them. Maybe we can learn something. Maybe they can start ethnically categorizing us too. They'd be really good at this. So let's get over there. Let's travel all these light years right now.
Well, that's another observation I've made before, that maybe somebody is very carefully preserving all of these based artifacts, but it's actually like the SPLC, and people in the future. The only thing that'll survive, the collapse of society is like the SPLC, like archive of hate tweets.
Oh, I hope so. I mean, that's a worthy and white pilling message for the future. But to be honest about white pills, I mean, I don't know if it was before we recorded or while we recorded, but I was mentioning these guys from South Africa, who were on the podcast. And it was a very white pilling episode because obviously they're 10 steps ahead of everyone else. They're in it. And it's, the horrors beyond your comprehension are happening on the daily there. But, they're filled with this sense of history, purpose, community. I mean, the decline also means, shit is hitting the fan. Competent people need to rise up to clear off the problems, to make stuff work. It really aligns a lot of incentives that are out of whack now. Even I just wrote an article about what the relationship between men and women. Everything's so fucked up, but now it might be the case that nature realigns our incentives quite fast if things are going to degrade to a point where it really will matter who's out there, fixing the lighting or, dealing with this or that problem, who's at home doing this and that. So, yeah, I mean, nature finds a way. I feel like that's
Can
kind
I
of
ask,
what
what was
happens.
white pilling about? Like, was it the fact that they were talking about that they were forming communities like inside of South Africa?
I think they were saying that the positive side, the silver lining of being ethnically cleansed and like forced into like a tiny area is that you do form a legitimate community at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially they, the guys that I was talking about, they were very much active politically. They were active with infrastructure projects, with, what type of currency are we going to use? They're part of this, Afriform thing where essentially like all the Afrikaners, because the thing is like a lot of stuff that's happening now in South Africa is very much segregation, is stuff that you couldn't really do in America. It's just like Orania. Where are you going to put it? Who's going to allow you to do a project like that? Essentially, like segregated space for, a certain very specific hue that is quite milky, and you can't do that in anywhere in the world. You can do that in South Africa because, obviously the government's incredibly corrupt, violent, and all sorts of stuff, but it's also weak. Its enforcement mechanisms are not as strong as in the U.S., like which essentially has anarcho-tyranny, which you described before. You're very much in danger if you're a law-abiding citizen, and you can essentially coast through, a few stints in jail if you're not. So I don't know.
Is
It's kind of.
Orania a walkable city?
Oh yeah. I think so. I don't know. City state. I don't know that much about Irania, but it's growing. People seem to be having a good time. It looks very wholesome. I'm sure they have their own problems, but because that's just the way it is. But it's one of those things. Like it just really wouldn't. You couldn't really do that in anywhere at this
That's
point.
kind of a white pill. Okay, so that's what we'll hope for. We'll hope that as we inevitably decline in just unprecedented ways in the next 5 to 10 years, that we will hope that that is accompanied by such a deep level of incompetency that as the state gets worse, it also just becomes more impotent, and maybe people will just like learn to ignore it in certain ways.
We're able to chisel out like a single like town with 8,000 people that kind of functions.
Yeah, but the thing is, even like, my parents both grew up under communism. Even under communism, then the darkest communism, you know, when things got really bad, like when we were in that, like the almost before we stepped into full starvation, the competent people had to be picked out of the population to save, the day. A lot of the neuroses and problems that we have, which are kind of a product of modernity, are a product of excess. The fact that we have money to burn, we have resources to burn, they're running out. And when you don't have resources to burn, hierarchy steps in, just bursts in like the Kool-Aid man. It has to come in because things need to be ordered. Nature abhors the vacuum. You can't have anarchy. So a certain hierarchy will come in. Will it be the best hierarchy? No, but there will be competency in it, just because you can't just have figureheads if you need the lights to go on or whatever, infrastructure you need to make work. So I think sadly, heroic times are upon us, and it's going to require some heroic men and women to withstand them and whatever, multiply and all the good stuff that we're supposed to be doing as humans.
Yeah, it's a question of whether there's going to be a reset, but it's a question of whether the reset happens before or after the power grid fails. And,
basically, yeah.
Like hopefully, what happened before.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll keep you posted here at the Subversive Podcast.
But remember, it won't matter, because even if the power grid goes out, you'll have physical access. We'll have transcripts of the Subversive Podcast in the giant tomb.
Yes,
that we're gonna
please.
build. Some sort of seastead at the bottom, something at the bottom of the ocean.
Nice. This will be one of the podcasts, I'm sure, that ends up at the bottom of the ocean.
It'll be the most listened to. It'll be the most read transcript in the new world.
Because it was so prescient, we're describing exactly what's going to happen.
Only the big brain ones will read the Moldbug transcript, because it's like probably 6.5 hours. I'm just guessing it was like a 6.5 hour show, so it's probably too many pages.
No, about 3 hours, and at the end he was just like, even he was looking around and saying, "Oh, I gotta go."
If you edit out the ums, it was like a tight 40 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I love Moldbug. There are a few people that I will never disavow, whatever cringy stuff they do. I mean, Moldbug and Zero HP. Yeah, whatever they say, even if they hate me publicly, I'll still be a stan. So, yeah.
Like
I mean,
Moldbug.
yeah. I mean, he's. I don't know. I think he might have done a little misstep by being so public about his personal life, maybe. I don't know. It does seem like
Well, that doesn't matter. I mean, he's publicly a racist. So like anything else he does is like, oh, he's got like baby mama drama. Like that doesn't like you can't shame people for that. I mean, you should, but like we don't. Like society is like no one's going to come after him
people
for
on
that.
the right wing shame him.
It might hurt your
Yeah.
racism credibility to also
That's
have
the
baby mama
problem.
drama.
I don't even think like people go after him
It
that
might
much
hurt
for
your
racism.
it might hurt your centrism credibility. We got to get ready. We got to get in the mindset for the podcast. Remember,
Exactly.
it's going to be
Sensible
recorded.
centrism.
It's going to be recorded. Yoram Hazomi is going to listen to it. We're both going to get Claremont fellowships.
Daddy wants that Claremont fellowship.
Yeah. I wish I could get a Claremont fellowship. I wish I could have time to go to Claremont and hang out and whatever, talk about Plato for 3 weeks or whatever one does.
When's the next time? Are you already have your next trip to America planned?
No, I don't know. I mean, yeah, no, no way. Can't go. Yeah, family, business. I got lots of stuff to do here.
So was your impression overall positive though, even though it was just in Miami? Did you look back and you're like, that was fun?
Yeah, of course. It was super fun, just being there and talking to all these. I made a lot of contacts there. I met Paul Gottfried. He came on the podcast. John O'Sullivan, who's going to come on the podcast as well.
Wait, Paul Gottfried was at NatCon?
Yeah, he spoke at NatCon.
Paul Gottfried spoke at NatCon?
Guys, this is
why wouldn't he?
Super based.
I know. I know why you're saying why wouldn't he, Citizen, but I mean like in terms of I don't know.
He's being revived within the movement. He's brought back into the fray. Yeah, he's very much.
He's Jewish. Why wouldn't he be at NatCon?
I guess that's true.
Self-hating, but still.
So, Citizen, we're gonna revive Tom Fleming, and everyone else will revive Paul Gottfried, and they'll both get famous again, and then they can meet and finally fight to the death, like they wanted to for all these decades. These are just two. We're just
jumping ahead.
We're just talking about old paleoconservative lore. Paul Gottfried has been around for a very long time.
Her last question is going to be who are her favorite heterodox thinkers.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Okay. We'll wait. We'll wait.
Let's see if we can get anything more out of this before we go to that.
No, Paul Gottfried's really good. I've always liked him. I see more people tweeting about his books, his like After Liberalism series, which I guess people are treating as like more prescient now. That I don't know, things just like
and John O'Sullivan's good too. He lives in Hungary, right? He's one of those guys.
Yeah. He's actually. I mean, I've only had went to 3 events, 3 speeches, and I went to the first event that I went to was one in Budapest. And I was invited to speak there. It was essentially an event on geopolitics, and I had to really rack my brain about how am I going to shove my liberalism angle into that. And essentially, I didn't really. I just had my typical speech on the death of liberalism, and people really liked it. And John O'Sullivan, essentially, he's the head of the big kind of right wing think tank here, the Danube Institute, and they were throwing the whole shindig. And it was really, really nice. And that's how I met him. I met his wife. Yeah, just very sweet people. I know.
So you can go to conferences in Europe because they're like all in Hungary, and that's like a 15-minute drive for you, basically.
Yeah, 2.5 hours, but yeah, pretty close.
Citizen, how come we don't move to Hungary? This is like right.
It is nice.
Like endless conferences. This is Future Hungarian citizen.
I think a Hungarian's harder to learn than a Romanian.
Yeah, but in Moldova you'd have to learn Russian too, so you have to do a twofer. But I mean, you could. Yeah, Hungarian's absolutely painful to learn. I'm part Hungarian. I can order soup at a restaurant, and that's about it. It's really hard, very very complicated, and I'm apparently good at this. I mean, I speak languages; it's no problem. But for some reason, Hungarians, it's the devil's tongue. It's
so
easy,
where did all the Germans go? Did they leave, or are they just not being Catholic anymore?
No, they left. They moved to Germany. And the thing is, the German government, if you could prove any sort of like German ancestry, even like a little bit, you would get a German. German, kind of, a German passport you would get pretty easily. So most people went to Germany after the Iron Curtain fell, and and even before that, I think you could, if you could, contact the embassy and probably do a bit of giving people money, you'd be able to go to Germany even during communism. Yeah. So there's all sorts of little enclaves here of all sorts of people from all over the world.
So
I mean,
you're against Romanian reunification.
Romanian reunification with Moldova, or
Yeah.
I don't care. To be honest, I don't have any horse in this race. I mean, I live on the other side of the country. I'm maybe for reunification with Hungary because I live in Transylvania, and I guess being a little more Hungarian wouldn't hurt. But no, I have. I mean, it's all. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter
Who do
who
you
rules.
vote for in Romania? Do you just vote National Liberal?
Oh God. I mean, you can vote. There is kind of a more semi-extreme right wing, kind of Christian right wing thing, but it's just like a wasted vote. To be honest, I haven't voted yet in any. I mean, I've been back here like 2 or 3 years now. I think we had local elections and I missed those because I didn't know anything about the candidates. I didn't take it because it was just around the time my baby was born. And I was like, no way, I'm gonna get into this. It doesn't really matter. So no, I haven't voted since I've come back, and I mean, probably I don't know anymore. To be honest, I would have voted like liberal, just like center left before I left to the UK and became thoroughly convinced that I have to vote right wing. But there's just not any like reason. It's not even like a Republican equivalent here. The kind of the more like right wing party here is pretty much just populated by the old communists. So it doesn't make any sort of sense. Because back in the day, essentially the form of government that we had under communism was essentially kind of a nationalist communist state, was kind of loosely affiliated with the Soviet Union, but wasn't part of the Soviet Union. We had our own flavor of it, with the dictator cult and everything. So it was strangely right wing, because of the nationalist flavor. So it's hard to, it's very hard to kind of stuff Romanian politics into the left right mold. It doesn't really make any sense. There's no good person to vote for. You just kind of hope they don't screw you too hard, and that's it.
That's actually like a very fascinating topic. Citizen and I have actually talked about that a few times on some of our spaces, where because like
when you say the right wing party in Romania, do you mean the Social Democrats or the National Liberals? Like which one do you think?
Social Democrats would be seen here as the right wing. That's kind of more. Yeah, the PSD would be more right wing, and the PNL would be seen as more left wing. They're more aligned with Europe. They're more aligned with that. The right wing here is more kind of interested in national stuff. They're interested in helping the elderly and the Romanians and the rural people and stuff like that. It has a more nationalist flavor to it, but it's still like redistributive. It's still big government stuff. So. And the PNL is a bit more kind of like Reagan libertarian in the sense that they're more for the economy, and they're still very redistributive. They're still very like high taxes, but they're trying to do more
Gun
things.
to your head, you have to choose.
PNL probably. I mean, I'd rather, have a party that's interested in helping business, I guess. Pretty much. Because the other guys are just like, they're like these hardened, strange, like old crusty communists, which they're like every one of them is corrupt to the bone, and the only thing they do is like they go to elections in the countryside, like local elections, and they bribe the little villagers with like a bottle of sunflower seed oil and a kilogram of flour, and tell them,
That
yeah,
sounds
you vote.
awesome. I wish I could get flour from American politicians.
I mean,
I wish Ron
whatever it
DeSantis
takes.
would give me some flour.
Come up to your house with his white boots, his long thigh-high white boots. No, but it's interesting. We've talked about this on a few spaces before of like fossilized communist organizations in Europe actually being like more conservative, actually being more conservative materially than like what I don't know, like what Americans would consider like a moderate liberal. Just because things have changed so fast, it's very funny. There's been a lot of there are a lot of examples of that.
Yeah, trying not to buy too much into like the based communist meme, but you read like interviews with like rank and file, like elderly communists in the former Eastern Bloc, and they all they're all they like hate rock and roll, they hate dancing, they don't like the Jews. It's like,
God.
Yeah, like they're like boomers. They're actually no, they're more right wing than an American boomer is. I guess that maybe they're the equivalent of like right wing, an American maybe Greatest Generation or something like that. But maybe they're even more right wing in that case too. And so yeah, calling them communist is it's only helpful if like the historical context is there, but in like a vacuum, it doesn't it doesn't like actually like accurately depict them on like a some sort of universal left right spectrum because yeah they're just like they don't share in lots of instances they just didn't share most of like the cultural biases that American liberals did like
they
American
don't know that communism is about supporting trans kids.
yeah, yeah they didn't learn that and then also since it was identified deeply with their own country yeah, like they didn't feel any conflict of it of their ideology manifesting as like just nationalist fervor. Whereas now,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be this kind of like, you're just supposed to champion rootless cosmopolitanism. And so communism is kind of caught out like old for like a lot of older generations. A lot of them probably dead now, but yeah, like with communists, they're just like caught out, not really fitting that mold because yeah, they're like technically left, but then they're also just like rabid nationalists.
Yeah, I mean, you could even call what we had here National Socialism because essentially that was it. It was an attempt at national communism just because you had the you know like taking over all industry. There wasn't kind of a like a fascist agreement between industry and the government. It was essentially okay. The government owns everything, owns all the land. The redistribution, but we also highly nationalistic. We don't really buy into the international communist component, except people gave kind of lip service to that, but just to the level of being left alone. So it was a very strange combination. Would not recommend. It sucked in absolutely a million ways. There are still
Did
some
it
people
suck
who.
worse than London though?
Oh, of course. I mean, yeah, of course, of course. I mean, London now, no, it definitely sucked worse than London now. What it doesn't suck more than is maybe extrapolate London, 50, 100 years from now, and just like keep the trend line, and don't do anything to it, and just let it slide into whatever it's gonna be, and then I can't promise that it's not gonna suck worse, but no, I mean, like bread lines for hours, always kind of on the brink of starvation. Terrible, you had hot water like an hour a day. No, obviously it's life isn't all about the amenities and comforts and creature comforts and all that stuff. And obviously people had closer relationships and a lot of that stuff, but it was really a tough life. I
Yeah,
feel
you got
like
to
you
see the
can.
silver lining where it builds community.
Yeah, oh no,
Waiting
definitely
in the
people
no,
bread
had
line,
communities.
talking to your buds in the bread line. That sounds chill as
Yeah.
hell.
Yeah.
intermittent fasting with no seed oils.
Oh no, we did have. I mean, sunflower seed oil is the core oil in
Oh,
in Eastern Europe.
oh, then it's
Like,
over.
I'm sorry, yeah, yeah. I don't know how they extract it. I don't know if it's like
How come none of you are fat?
none of us. Thank you, but I don't know. I think we're increasingly having fatter people. I think we're just they're bringing in all sorts of exotic seed oils. Now we've got the canola, we've got the grape seed, we don't have cottonseed oil because we don't really grow cotton, but we've got all sorts of interesting seed oils. But I also think it's just like it's fast food. Like fast food is taken over here quite a lot. I mean, people love whatever kebabs and stuff, and we starting to see the American phenotypes of incredible girth that I've just couldn't see like 10 years ago. It wasn't the case. But now if I see like a class of, kids in high school, there's always one girl or one boy who is like
it's one
overweight.
Nemetsian horror.
Yeah, but there is the sugar cookie people are here, and
That's so
there's like
discouraging to hear. That's
5 or
terrible
6
to
of them
hear.
are like, obese or morbidly obese. Like that was just impossible. You had like one person like that in a whole town, and people would be like, yeah, okay, it's that guy. I can't believe, and that person probably had like some hormonal problem. Does that
Yeah, he'd be
happen?
like the carnival attraction.
Yeah, but now waddling starting to be a more
To
common.
be like one guy who was 225 pounds and he was in a freak show.
Yeah,
He had to
wasn't
join the
there like a
circus.
meme with like the fat guy club of New York in like the 20s, and they're all like, I don't know, 200-pound guys. Yeah, very yeah, not relatable.
Kicking my 199-pound son out of the house, telling him that he has only one option. The circus is leaving town, and I never want to see him again.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's
sad to hear,
a
though.
gone era.
That's sad to hear. Citizen, when you were in Europe, I feel like I feel like it's kind of cliche, but just for your own edification, it was striking to you too.
Oh yeah,
right?
everyone was beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It's like an
Hardly any fat people.
under-discussed thing. Like people, like even when they're like, very like right wing, they talk about like demographics or whatever, but they don't actually, like, sometimes people don't talk about like just that like visual impact, right, Citizen? That's what you're describing.
Yeah, like the Great Replacement wouldn't be so bad if we were like being replaced by more aesthetically attractive people.
Yeah, it'd be like fun.
Understand it.
They were just more fit, but
yeah.
So like probably number like immigration is like the second most important issue, and the first most important issue is banning sugar cookies. That really is.
Yeah, but that's it. I mean, a lot of people have all sorts of ideas of, well, why is it like there's like sugar cookies growing on trees. We're just not made to live in that environment. They're everywhere. They're easy to get. The people who have lower conscientiousness are surprised fatter than the people who have higher. Like it's pretty much it. It's not like there's like magic dust in the ether. It's the sugar cookies. It's the kebabs. It's whatever sauce slathered options you get on the marketplace because they taste great. And you eat those 3 times a day for a few years, and yeah, surprise, you turn into a land whale. That's just how it happens, and it's very easy to get there.
The walking, the Europeans are thin because they walk meme will die in like half a decade. It just won't. They'll still be walking everywhere, but it'll just be like a horror show.
But it's growing, like, I don't know, like Spain, Spain, like Mediterranean country. I think like their youth obesity rate's like 30-40% or something. Like it's like places like this where you think, they're just sunning in the, just dancing, whatever. It's all cool and Mediterranean. But actually, they're just eating sugar cookies like everyone else. It's depressing.
There won't be anywhere for Citizen to escape too soon.
That's just what I was thinking. Like, yeah. I'm trying to make up like a plan B. It's fucked.
I mean, if lack of sugar cookies is the goal, maybe you're right with Moldova. It's probably so the sugar cookies will be slowest to reach Moldova and their population, just because it is quite poor. But we are coming up on time a little bit here, and I want to ask you the question of the show. Do you have a subversive thinker, each of you together, whoever you'd like, that you would like to recommend to the audience?
Absolutely. This is where we're gonna plug the previous man we were mentioning. I was tweeting about his book. He just came out with a book very recently. His name's Thomas Fleming. And he actually used to work with Paul Gottfried. I think they have a book published together on
the conservative movement.
Yes. And which I think gets overlooked a lot. Like, I think now people talk about, like, when I feel like they reference like George Hawley or whatever when they talk about books specifically on the conservative movement. I actually didn't read it, but Thomas Fleming. He used to be the editor for Chronicles magazine. Chronicles is still around. We're friendly with some people that write for them, and
Gottfried's now the editor.
Yeah, Gottfried's now the editor. Yeah, and he just came out with a new book called Properties of Blood, which is very interesting. It's kind of like part of his life's work. He's trying to talk about the kind of natural basis for political organization. like kinship and blood and marriage and stuff like that, and also how it kind of relates to Christianity and kind of exploring, these things are kind of salient on the right online, especially too. Like, does Christianity does it subvert kind of natural relations between people, or does it like build the top of that kind of order? And so that's what his latest book is about. But yeah, he used to write for Chronicles regularly. He became prominent, I think, around the '80s, the PaleoCon movement. He was kind of one of the, he was just like another fierce critique of neoconservatism. He was warning people that this is going to be very, very bad. And he was very, very right. And I don't really see many people talk about him, but he has a few books that I always recommend to people, and they're very, very good. He's probably one of the smartest people the right has ever produced, in my opinion. He's probably one of the most learned people that the right has ever produced. And I think more people should be like grappling with his work, or just kind of like exploring it. It's all easily available now, everything's online or whatever. And I believe he's still around. He's not affiliated with Chronicles anymore. But especially for me, I don't know how it is with you, Citizen. I'm sure you're aware of a lot of the guys, but when I started breaking at a younger age from like mainstream right wing stuff, basically these like, like old boomer paleocons were like kind of all you had. They were people that have been around for a long time. They kind of saw the 60s, unfold and stuff. And so they were very like keen and aware of these things. And then they combine that in a lot of cases, like Gottfried's a good example, right? Like just an actual academic career. So they saw it, their instincts were good in a lot of cases, and they combined that with a decent level of erudition, which you don't really see on the right a lot anymore. Like
we're going to try and have Fleming as the first guest on our podcast. He needs the publicity. You should have him on too. I'm sure. He like self-published his book. He needs to get out there.
Actually, that is true. You should have him on. I'm sure he would come on. Yeah, that's a good idea. No bullying, but keep it in mind. Absolutely.
And thinker, who you should also have on, and I am bullying you, is Incel Freak.
Of course.
At Incel_Freak. Just a great Twitter poster. He's doing a lot to promote incel versus e-girl discourse. It's the talk of Twitter right now. Got an Incel Freak on.
Yeah. I would say unarguably he's the more important of the two. So if you only have one person to follow and you don't feel like reading, you definitely should follow Incel Freak, the Dark Lord Sauron. Very relevant. He probably will be in a position of great power and prominence within the next 20 years. God help us all. We'll be fine because, we're his top soldiers. So we'll be good. But everyone else will rue the day that they crossed Incel Freak. Very powerful figure.
Okay. I will investigate both these characters. I actually haven't heard of either, so I think that's very very generative recommendation. Because usually, I kind of have an inkling about what these people are about, but this time it's a surprise. So I will have Thomas Fleming. No.
Yeah, Thomas Fleming. Yeah.
Thomas Fleming and Incel Freak.
Correct.
Incel_Freak. Okay.
Yes.
Excellent.
You'll know him when you see him.
Okay, well, I will. After our conversation, I have to look into this. I mean,
he might not accept your ad request. He might block you because you're a woman. But
that's just part of that. That's all part of the initiation ritual.
Oh, maybe that's why I haven't seen him, because he's he works in mysterious ways.
Yes.
But yeah, I'll investigate Incel Freak. But I want to encourage people very warmly to follow the spaces while there are still spaces, and to sign up to the podcast wherever it may appear, and I'll link to it when it comes out. And yeah, I think this is going to be a very, very worthy project and a wonderful addition to the right wing space, whatever we're calling it these days. So
thank you so much, Alex, for having us. This was really wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It really was. I'm glad to have had my own little version of Night Owls, because I never get to talk to you guys at breakfast while I'm changing the toddler and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm really glad to have had the chance to talk to you, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, the next time you can, Just play it for the toddler. We'll sing songs. We'll,
Oh.
we won't do any of that, but like we will. Yeah, we will. It'll be fine. It'll be good. All little kids should listen to us. Just do
I
what we say. Be
mean, yeah,
influential.
I've heard worse, so yeah, why not? It's at least they'll learn something interesting about Rosedale, Texas, or other interesting locations.
I can't imagine that going wrong. I can't. Yeah, it can't possibly fail.
It's important. I'll teach them. Like one of the top 10 things he'll learn by age 3 is about the town they called Rosedale and what happened there. It needs to be consigned in history.
Like a fairy tale, like a horrifying Grimm's fairy tale. That's what it'll be. Maybe I'll rework that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, see you online.
Take care.
Bye-bye.